All right, who's going to be on here first? Captain Steel, Tropical, Pacey. All right, so tonight we're going to be talking about blackout stories. So Steve's going to come on here at about 9:30, but until then, any of you guys that have a story of a blackout or a samba, whether it's helping somebody or, it happened to you, just ask to join there live, and I'll bring you on and we'll talk about it real quick, and then we'll just go to the next person. The idea behind this is for everyone that, free dives and spearfishes and is getting into it, or whether you're just getting into it or you've done it your whole life, it'll give others a chance to learn from our mistakes, and hopefully save more lives. So Errol's the first one here. Let's see what he's got to say.
Cam, what's up?
Egg roll.
What's going down?
Oh, look at the headphones, man. You're coming in you look like you're coming in from a techno nightclub. From a
Just
Ibiza.
flew in, dude. Friggin' rager.
All right, so Errol Patiña is one of the best free dive instructors here in Florida and internationally. Works with FII. He's been a buddy of mine for many, many years. He actually taught me the free dive instructors junior instructor class, and really phenomenal diver and just an incredible teacher. So I'm sure that you've seen multiple blackouts in multiple different situations. Any of those you want to share?
Well, thanks for having me, Cam. Always good to see you. We don't get to see each other.
Yeah, you weren't
I just
invited.
bullied my way in. That's what you do in the kitchen when you clean in Kubera jaws. Just push people out of the way, like, I gotta get in there. But yeah, dude, blackouts, it's kind of crazy. You kind of get used to them, which I don't know if that's a really good thing in the sense that, you become so vigilant. You just, you can see them coming, like different clients that I've been with over the years. You get so in tune with a person's body language that like these little nuances that we talk about in our classes, and they really stand out to a trained eye. Mm-hmm. Just like, I guess, a spear fisherman, with certain movements of their fins and tails and the way they approach the reefs, this and that, you just really get in tune with that. So, yeah, I've become really in tune with what people look like in the water, and any little nuance, I know that, this might be a potential problem.
Mm-hmm. So let me go ahead and stop you there. So you and I obviously are very well versed on what it means to have a blackout or to have a samba. As concisely as you possibly can, explain what a samba is and explain what a blackout is.
Okay, so a samba is just a layman's term for a loss of motor control. Loss of motor control is when basically, I want you to think of like you have a car and you have your gas tank and it's been on E for the last 5 days and you have 57 cents in your pocket. You roll up the windows and you're in aerodynamic mode. You're trying to get to the gas station and it starts to sputter on you. That's a loss of motor control. That's a samba. So basically the body doesn't have enough oxygen in it, and it just can't do the motor function it needs to. So therefore you need a buddy to help keep that airway up because you're not able to keep your airway up. A blackout is the next phase. Basically the loss of motor control, there's so little oxygen and then you just go nighty-night. And believe it or not, that is the best possible thing that can ever happen to you, because your body goes into a conservation mode, a self-preservation mode, so it doesn't harm itself. So those are basically the two definitions of those two things.
Yeah, and I think that's the greatest misconception. And honestly, before I ever had the class, that's what I was always terrified of, a blackout. And when we teach these classes, like, that's one of the first parts of it is teaching people how this is our body's most effective way of saving our lives. So it's up to you to never put yourself in that situation, but if and when that situation does come, your body is doing its best to save your ass. You need to know what to do to help a person that has had a blackout or a samba. So that being said, when we teach these classes, you're saying, like, you're in tune with, what's going on with people, whatever. I always say, look for something different, look for them to do something different than they normally would if they've gone longer than they normally should, whatever. Like just constantly be on the look for something
Any
different.
abnormality.
So
Absolutely.
so of all the blackouts you've seen, what have been like some of the ones that have stood out the
My
most?
own. Yeah, I had a I
Really?
had yeah,
I think you told
I
me
had
about this.
my first one ever in November, and it was interesting. I'll be honest with you, I'm super glad it happened because I've been preaching this stuff for, years and years. Like, everybody's like, "Oh, have you ever had a blackout?" And I no, I never had a blackout. Never had lost motor control or anything. But it was a very humbling experience. Obviously, I can talk about it because I'm here. But it was an interesting day, and yeah, it didn't feel like anything, to be honest with you. It felt like I felt amazing during the whole thing. So
So you
yeah,
had the full euphoria.
euphoria, like it was amazing. Like it was such a great state, you know. And the guys I was with, they were like, when I came to, I was like, oh my God, that dive was incredible. And they're just looking at me like I had 10 heads. I'm like, what's the deal? I'm like, are you messing with us? I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? He's like, yeah, you came up and you started going, nah, 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 nah. Like your tongue was out and everything. I was like, what?
And how
Okay,
deep and how
so it was
long
an
was that one?
interesting day. So I was just doing some line diving.
Keep it concise.
Yeah,
I'm
no
giving
worries.
you
I
like
was
2 more
line
minutes.
diving one day. It was just regular training day, and I was out with two of my buddies. And my first warm up was 334, so that was like it was quite long. It was 10 meters, 33 feet, 334. Felt good, no problems. Do my second warm up. I'm down there. Everything's cool in the gang. Coming up, everything's good. I'm feeling good, and I remember my buddy trying to grab my face. And I was like, why would he grab my face? Like, we're friends. That's like kind of what's going through my mind. And he grabs my face, and that's all I really remember is like him like on me. I'm like, what are you doing, dude? He's like, dude, you were just like, you were doing stupid sounds. And then I looked at my watch, and that dive was at 70 feet for 350. So without a doubt, they were.
Wow. So
Yeah,
that's the one you blacked
yeah.
out on was 70 for
It was a
350?
very long
Wow.
dive,
Ah.
but I mean, I've had dives in the 3 minute range, so it's not abnormal. But 350
Mhm.
was definitely a long dive. So looking back at it,
That's
I
long.
definitely needed a pullback, no doubt. So lesson learned.
Yeah. You met, what was it? I think it's probably 2 or 3 years ago. I remember we were in the Bahamas, and it was the second day of the trip or third day of the trip or whatever. And you're like, Cam, you need to like slow your dives down. I'm like, Errol, I'm diving fine. And like, give me your watch. And I want to say that I did the first one I did like 230, and the second one I did like 250. And I gave your watch back.
Yeah.
I can dive fine. I just never get a chance to slow down and dive. And outside of a class, I don't think I've ever done any line diving except to like warm clients up and actually take the time to dive by myself. But it is an extremely useful tool. And, we talked about me going to Worlds this year. And if I had done that, like we definitely would have done more line diving and, learned from you guys.
Yeah, you
But,
definitely you
yeah,
learn a lot on the
is there,
line. It's just a training tool. That's all it is. You don't have to spend a gazillion years on it, but to go out there every now and then, it definitely helps.
well, what would be your advice to people for the blackouts?
Don't fear them. They're again, your body's protecting yourself, but you
I'm
yeah.
afraid of them.
I
Yeah, because I mean, everybody expects me to be
well,
watching them. Like, I think people take for granted that I need
yeah,
watching too, and I have to tell people that. I'm like, look, man, I'm here to watch your ass, but I'm probably making the hardest dives, and the cameraman usually is. Hence the reason, like, once at least I've saved the cameraman. The guy
I saw that video. That was interesting. But I think people they like, for example, on our level, yeah, we're probably going to be the guy saving you. But at the same time, when we go out, we need to understand that our buddies are going to have our backs. Like, we can't go out we can't go out with people who are not going to be responsible. I'm not looking for the best diver in the world. I don't care how deep. I need the most responsible diver with me. And sometimes it's a challenge when you're having
Agreed.
with clients, because you're trying to shape them, but
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, that's part of our job is to shape them into what we want them to be when we're not with them. You know.
Yeah, take a class, Jake. You really
Yeah,
need to take a freaking
they're just
class.
it's a humbling experience when you get in front of a professional and that they just guide you through it and help you make wiser decisions. And a lot of the people I'm teaching, they're moms, they're dads, they have children, parents, they're just like us. So, and everybody wants to go
Mm,
home to their families, which is amazing, So I can't
for sure.
reiterate that enough. The chest beaten alphas, they don't have very long, they don't have a lot of longevity in this sport.
Short-lived,
Yeah.
few brain cells. If anybody else has any questions, we still got 15 minutes here before Steve comes on. So if you guys have any questions about anything, just pop on and ask to be on live. And it doesn't matter what it's about. This is just time for you guys to ask questions and gives me an excuse to get Errol off the phone.
All right. Hey,
No,
I
thanks for coming on, Errol. Like, if you guys ever have any questions about freediving, like, Errol is usually my first call. With any kind of training stuff or injuries or things that I have questions about with
marital
freediving,
advice.
and he teaches marital advice. Errol teaches a fair amount of the classes that we do for our clients, whether it's level 1 or 2. And it's really phenomenal, the stuff that he's done. So he's a wealth of knowledge if you guys ever need
Cool.
anybody.
All right, Cam. Well, listen, I'm gonna tune out, and then looking forward to listen to the rest of the IG story thing, whatever the thing is called. Did you get a name yet?
I don't know. We got to
Cam's
find a
Corner,
name.
Cam's
There's been
Corner, or
some
something
pretty
like
funny
that.
ones.
Yeah.
Cam's Corner. Yeah. Any tips on how to dive safer in lower vis situation? Um, you can answer that one. Any tips on how to dive safer in a lower vis situation? Can you
I
see that on
can.
your screen?
Is he referring to spearfishing? Float
Yeah.
line all day long.
Float line, yeah. That's the easiest way is you're always attached, and a lot of times in that situation what we'll do is one gun. So two people, one gun, and the other guy holds a float line. So he's basically feeding it down to the one guy. If he hears him shoot, he pulls like hell. And that way you guys are always like attached to each other, and you have incentive to be ready for him to come up,
Right.
besides the obvious, but you're going to get the gun next. So float line versus reel gun,
Yeah.
situational. I tell everybody that's starting out, use a float line. And even still, excuse me, like I use a float line most of the time. The reel guns are good for like around structure. When you're going to go in and out of structure and you're shooting a lot of, oh my gosh, so many questions right now. In and out of structure, and you're worried about the float line getting tangled and stuff, but you really got to be confident in your equipment and have good stuff. Yeah, you got to be
Yeah.
pretty careful with that.
Real, I found a lot of people, it's just an advanced tool. A lot of, if you get out there with no experience, you start getting wrapped in it and turning yourself around, and that stuff, that dyneem becomes like razor blade.
Situational awareness. Speaking of which, situational awareness, you see this right here? So this shirt has blood
Nice.
on it. So I was like, Connor, do you think we can match this color? So he got
This
blue and
looks
painted it
looks
right there.
good though, man. He did a good job.
Did not cover it. Yeah, float line all the way. So tips on getting muttons on the pole spear.
Get close.
So my cousin Aaron is the best at getting those of I think anyone that I've ever seen, and I actually learned from him, even though he's 18 years younger than me, and it was really frustrating watching him. But the best way to get muttons is to get right over the top of them and go down at a 45-degree angle and never stop. Like just chase them down and do not stop. Get right on them, and eventually they're going to do this, and they're going to turn, and they're going to offer a shot, and you're going to smash them. Have you eaten a sandwich at 20 foot? No.
Some
But I have had a beer at 20 foot. You rod and reel at all in your excursions? Yeah, we actually do quite a bit of fishing. And we do everything across the board. Like we do a lot of wahoo fishing, a lot of blue water fishing, a lot of deep dropping, a lot of yellowfins. Like we always try to coordinate, getting yellowfins. But if we can't shoot the yellowfins, then we'll catch them. And on days that we're shooting yellowfins and catching them, we usually just release them. Same thing with whoos, like we release them on a trip this year. Like we started catching whoos like hand over fist, and I was like, dude, you got to start releasing these. Fitzy, if you're on here, like the guy was so mad at me. It was like the first time I met him, like, dude, Fitz, you got to start releasing these things, because we were like super remote and we'd already caught like 6, and I was like, got to release them. We're 100 miles from shore. We're gonna be out here 3 days. You got to let these things go. What about hunting in low vis and strong current where you can't use a float line? Use one without a buoy, or use one with a much smaller buoy. Use a much longer line than you normally would, and use a little tiny buoy so that it cuts through the water better. I've never heard even of anyone diving north of Miami in Florida, so don't even bother.
All of it.
All right, let's hear quite the blackout story. Come on live.
How do I get out of this one, Cam?
I don't know.
I guess hang up and then we'll call.
Who's a leech? A leech 92. Come on with a blackout story. Bring the ruckus. Dream spearing location anywhere in the world. Oh man, I've got a whole list of places.
All right, I'm leaving, Cam.
We're trying to go.
All right, take care.
All right, buddy. I'll see you soon. Jack, the biggest fish on a pole spear that I've taken is a 219-pound yellowfin tuna. I think the videos should be on my YouTube. It was pretty awesome. And actually, that same day, speaking of blackouts, the guy that was filming me blacked out after I put the second shot at him at like 100 foot, and I had to rescue that guy, which was kind of gnarly. Steve, let's talk, buddy. Where you at, Steve? Lost him. Yeah, we're going to tell the blackout story when Steve comes on. He'll come on in another 10 minutes or so. Steve, let's see who comes on first here. We're going to go Steve first. Oh, actually, they're both Steves. We're going to go Steve Hudson first. Steve Hudson, you're unable to join for some reason. Anybody else? We got 10 minutes left before Steve comes on, or we can just jump into it. But yeah, the blackout things, like Errol said, if you guys haven't had a class, please go get a class. It doesn't matter who it's with. Did you dive in Australia waters? Yes, I used to live in Australia. I lived down in Sydney, and then I lived up in Brisbane. So I've dove the entire East Coast, shot marlin down south of Sydney, and seen them all the way up north on the reef. Shot doggies and yellowfins and wahoo and mulloway and everything there. I've spent a ton of time there. A lot of the places that we used to dive there in Australia are now closed. All that Byron Bay stuff. We used to have so many rocks there in Byron where, like, from shore, you could pretty much guarantee you're going to hop in and shoot like a 20, 25 kilo Jewy, which was pretty epic. Went to an awareness. Best place you loves to always dive. The next one. I think Lady Musgrave is closed, isn't it? All right, Steve, let's see if we can get you in here, dude. Oh, here's a leech. Ale. Hey,
how's it going?
Here we go.
My name's Alejandro.
Hey, what's up, buddy? What's your name?
A leech for short. I'm Mexican, so the last name's way too long. How's it going, man? Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you, man. I'm
We
Cameron.
have some friends in common down in Miami. I have this guy, this friend Andy Tweedle, who I don't know if you remember him, but says hi. How's it going,
Yep,
man?
good
Yeah,
people.
man. So I've been diving for a while, and I took a course with Stepanek when I was 17. And I'm not, by any means, I'm not a great diver. And I could, hit 100. We hunted like 70 here, average to amateur. But I always kind of prided myself on being safe. I had a Samba during the course. And after that, I just really, really safe. I never pushed it. I was always just spotting my buddies. They all think I'm a grandma. And then in about 3 months ago, I had never taken bonine or Dramamine or any of the anti-nausea stuff. I think I have something wrong with my ears, but every time I was diving, I was getting horrible nausea. So I took this stuff for the first time in a while. I wasn't nauseous. I wasn't throwing up. I was feeling good. I was diving about 80, 90, like all day, down by Key Largo, like the Dwayne and the Bibwreck. We were going for Wahoo.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Have you
Yes,
had a
I had a
have you
class
had a
with
class before?
Stepanek. I think it was
So you had a
level
level 1, yeah?
I had taken
Okay.
some courses in Mexico with like some friends, so I was pretty good when I took the level 2. And yeah, it was a great class. So Martin and his wife, like, amazing instructors. That was a while ago, but we kept up, and I practiced still. I did some line diving with some friends, and anyway, we're in Key Largo, and this is pretty much how I look at it. The only thing I did right was make sure I had a buddy watching me. But what happened was, after having gone diving 80 feet, 90 feet all day and feeling good, I dropped over the bib, and I went pretty deep. At about 90, I saw a permit, and I hit it at about 100. And on the way up, I have this Chris Coates double roller, this like roller gun that shoots pretty well. I took a really far shot. The line got kind of caught on the reel. So I'm on the way up, like about 50 feet or so, and the permit is taking line and it's getting caught, taking line and getting up, and the viz is terrible. So I'm signaling to my buddies to come help me. They don't see me because it's so murky. So at about 40 feet, I just start kicking as hard up as I can. I think I'm going to lose the gun, so I'm kind of panicking. This is about a minute, 5 seconds into the dive. The whole dive was like a minute 15. And what I remember was hitting the surface and then sort of like catching my breath. And then we got on the boat and everything was fine. And I didn't even know I blacked out. They told me, they didn't really say anything. Everyone was kind of quiet. We ended the day because obviously it was close. But it wasn't until later that we got on land that my friends were like, no, dude, you were completely out. You were unconscious. I lost the gun. And yeah, I mean, I did everything wrong except for have a buddy there, but it was terrifying. I was out cold for probably like 10 seconds. My buddy, Iggy Spearing, pretty much saved my life.
Thanks, Iggy. So your first kid's going to be named Iggy. Your wife is going to be so pissed. Sorry, Iggy. It's a cool name. Oh man. Well, I cannot tell you how many times that has happened. And for many, many years, I've told kids, especially that are getting into it, like, if you ever have a gun, that jams or reel fails on you or whatever, and you have to make the decision to let it go, call me. I will help you get a new gun, even if it comes out of my own pocket, because you can always get another gun. Right. You cannot replace your life. So if that situation came up again, I would hope that maturity wise and whatever economic situation in wise, you would just let that thing go. And I have let go so many guns, like in so many stupid situations where I had no excuse for it. But yeah, that's a good, scary, learning experience lesson. One of my buddies, Brad from Headhunter Spearfishing.
I don't know.
Headhunter Spearfishing,
I've
Brad.
Spoke with him a couple times, buying like a pole spear. So.
I'm going to have him on here probably next week, and I had a pretty scary incident with him, and it was from a fish this big that almost took me out. So be careful. Right. Don't be afraid to let it all go. But well, good, man. Well, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it. All right, buddy. See ya. All right. Who's next? Thanks for that one. That was a good one. Any one of these stories is, informative for people, because everybody's been in these situations. And if you haven't, at least now you've got it in your head. Like the story that's coming up with Steve, we had talked about this so much, and you heard, GR and I talking last night. We had talked about, what would happen if we were in deep water and we couldn't get to the person or whatever. And we'd always said, the other person is pretty much already dead, so shoot him. And that's exactly what I ended up having to do with Steve. And it's a pretty wild story, and hopefully nobody's ever got to go through that. But we got about 5 minutes left here before Steve gets on. Anybody else got any good stories? And I agree, the reels on the waist are horrific. Like, I've seen so many crazy tangle ups, with people that are really, skilled. Not to mention any names of any Miami people, but one of my buddies was on a trip with me, and him and I have gone back and forth for years about how dangerous those reels are on your waist. And sure enough, he got tangled and he had to drop his whole rig. I think a shark took a mutton that he shot, and it, like, the reel didn't pay out, or I think the line got buried in the reel, and he had to drop his whole belt and lost everything, pole spear and everything. I have a grateful story. All right, Safford, let's hear it. Come on, join. So see the two little smiley faces? Press that. That, I think, is how you join. Yeah, press the little smiley faces down there, the two of them, and ask to join live. Saffron, let's hear your story. We're still looking for names for this too. These nightly talks, these deep thoughts. Can we hear about Haiti waters? No, I'm not talking about Haiti. It's my secret spot. DR? Yeah, you guys have pretty much wiped it out, but there's still some good blue water diving there. Do we use variable weight on the deep dives? Rarely. We use it usually for getting fish out of holes in current. We don't want to put people past their limits. We want people to be able to do it on their own power and come up on their own as well. But if and when a fish does get in a hole, we will use a variable weight, which is you hold a weight that you're basically dropping when you get down there. And it is a very useful tool, but it can put people past their, oh my gosh, yes, we need Mason on here. It can put people past their limit, like, very, very easily. Oh, that's so true, Chad. I got to get him. The deepest dive I've done is that one that I was talking to GR about yesterday. That was 119 to shoot the biggest grouper that I've ever shot, which was, man, he was monstrous. He was way over 100, like probably 130 or something. And then the same depth to shoot the one that I landed on that same spot, which was like 77 or something. Let's go. Come on. All you guys that are talking about telling these stories, join and go live with me real quick. Get Chad Bags. Who is this Chad Bags? Deep inside Davy Jones' locker. Oh, Kerry Christian, the guy that's on here right now, this Kerry Christian 4 is one of my oldest diving buddies from Cayman Brack, where our family's from. And I remember when I want to say I was probably 14 or 15, and Kerry was diving like 100 foot. And back then we had like jet fins and stuff. It was pretty wild to see him able to do that. Where can I book a trip? Carlos, just send me an email or send me a PM or whatever, and we'll get you set up with trips. Did you see that 154 pounder? I did. I'm a kid. Finn, you're a kid. I can dive 10 meters. Innocent shot. Blah, 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 blah. All right, Steve, your time's coming up here. Nobody else is coming on. Yes, I do equalize without hands. Hence the reason, when the first cameras, underwater cameras came out, the big ones, I'd hold one in my left hand and hold the gun in the right hand and dive like that. And you can't really do that if you've got to equalize with your hands. So, it was pretty difficult to do, but I've been able to do it since I was a kid, and I think it must be hereditary as well. Like Connor can do it. He's 6 now, but he's been able to do it since he was like 4. The furthest south I've been in the Caribbean, I've been all through the Caribbean. I've been Brazil, Venezuela, probably, 40 or 50% of the islands, Curacao, Los Roques. I've been done a whole bunch of places. I have a hell story. We're on a commercial scale, and that's related, but cruising nonetheless. Brandon, send me a message, and we'll maybe do another talk about that. The biggest gun I have, oh gosh, probably that Rife Blue Water with those giant wings. Hunter can do it. He can do hands-free. That's good. I think it's hereditary, because you can do it too, can't you, cuz? And Willie, you can do it too, right? These are all my cousins that are coming on here. Salty Scott, Blake Gaylord, all them. Like I think I said last night, I'm the weakest amongst my family. Blake and William and Aaron, they're all freaks of nature. That's awesome. Willie, can you dive hands-free? Steve, get on here. Let's go. I have not dove in Ecuador. As far as I knew, Ecuador didn't touch the Caribbean. Kirkconnell Chronicles. That's not bad. Los Roques was awesome. That was a long time ago, but lots of big mutton snappers. It was a really dirty one there. Tell the finger story. Give me in. Steve, you got to come on. How's it work? Steve, request again. Diego. Yeah, Diego's an old time buddy. Yeah, that's old school. Blake is a green turtle. Steve, come on. Request to go on. Be better. That was the other idea, is to call this Be Better, because that's what I always tell people. Be better. Hands free here. Yes, nice. Sketchiest dive I've ever done. This one with Steve that we're about to talk about. All right, let's see, Steve. Come on. Let's see. There we go. All right.
Oh, there he
I'm not
is.
inviting you anymore.
How's it going, dude?
What's up, buddy? All right, so everybody, this is Steve Bennett, longtime buddy. I guess we probably met over Tampa at like
diving with Ed
or something.
Yeah, I think I was probably
think.
16 years old diving with Ed just before the state championship. I dove with you and Blake in that one.
Mm-hmm. Didn't you?
Kyle beat us that year, I
Yeah.
think.
So we, yeah, he probably cheated.
Jose. I'm kidding.
Yeah. So Steve Bennett, he lives over there. You guys basically, your house was like directly across from the Anclote boat.
Yeah,
ramp,
we get the qualified show every
right?
day.
Oh God, that's so true. That is pretty epic. But you know, one of the it's interesting what stands out in your memories of your people or whatever. One of the most interesting, you know, things that I ever heard from you. You're probably the first person I ever heard talk about catching gags in shallow and shooting gags in really shallow. Like, what's the shallowest you think you've ever shot a legal gag grouper on the West Coast?
Man, God,
they don't have internet.
So many of them from the John boat. I mean, those wintertime ones back when we used to be able to do it, at least, man, they'd get up in those rocks, up in the channel. You know, they'd dredge the channel out, push everything out to the side, and
like
in the river,
like all the way up in there, like
the river.
In the, like, didn't you say you got one under the ramp?
I don't know if you recall. It might have even been Blake. I don't know if he's still on here. There was that one year where the tournament got blown out. We got bad weather, but they ran it anyway. And somebody ended up shooting 2 or 3 from the boat ramp and actually won it. Otherwise, it was a stingray contest. But yeah, we've got him a couple miles back up the rivers here, especially in the wintertime. You know, a lot of that comes from fishing with Ed, and I mean, he'd be probably one of the first ones to tell you. It's surprising how many of those fish are like actually resident fish. Like, they don't go in and out when the weather changes. You just get to see them more, or the bait comes out.
Yeah. And you've got the power plant right there too, so it probably keeps the temperature, you know, and the bait and stuff in there.
For a long time especially. And even if it doesn't do it quite as much now, I think it probably established a lot of those patterns and stuff. Plus, it's just fishy. I mean, it's a good place to grow up with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are you still living in your parents' basement?
I wish, yeah.
I know, me too. I wish I lived there too.
Yeah,
man.
you talked about one of the first
setup.
things you remember. I remember you coming over and diving one day. I was pretty sure I was like cutting out of high school for you and who was it? DJ. You and DJ showing me stuff on VHS back in the day, I think. Yeah.
Oh, DJ Strunts, really?
You know, you guys, you come hang out and you crash down in the parents' basement and you say, wow, you did exactly how I do it. So, yeah, I think it was probably 10 years difference at that point, but definitely a similar mindset. I think we were both excited at that point just to go and get in as much water as we can and dive with as many different people as we could, as many places.
You know, and as much cool stuff as I get to do, like I basically get to go to the best places in the world, you know, and the most incredible boats. I'm extremely spoiled in what I get to do. I still froth. Like yesterday, Connor and I were out on the Sea-Doo, and we were fishing on the docks, and I was like, we're coming back here tomorrow with the guns, and we're gonna shoot sheep's head. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. But I mean, that's, the difference, in people that have been doing it their whole lives. We grew up, just frothing on whatever, just like a chance to do it anywhere. And that's what kind of, spawned that group of buddies that we have to do more and more cool stuff. And so this leads us into, the story where we're basically, we have a friendship for life. Not that we weren't anyways, but you were in college your second year,
it was
maybe?
my summer
Sophomore?
between my freshman and sophomore year. And I think you and I had both been spending a little bit of time in Boca Grande that summer, on and off with Ed. So, we got to meet a lot of the same guys and talked about doing some cool dive trips and such. And, it all came together, or not, that fateful day. Yeah.
So I want to. It was July 5th.
Yeah, probably was 2008
right?
then, maybe 8. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were diving down in off of Boca Grande. We were diving on some deep stuff, and I think we were in like 160 or 170 foot. And this is the way I remember it. And I honestly I haven't read the story in a while. Like, people ask me to tell the story a lot, and I tell them just to go read it. And probably in the whole time since then, I bet you I've probably only told the story maybe 20, 30 times. Like, it's a tough one, and this is one of the hardest things to explain to people. Like, you and I are good buddies, and I've saved a couple of my really good friends, and it's tough, man. It's really tough. So on that one, we were diving all day, and it was you and I, and then like 4 guys fishing, and we were anchored up on this spot, and we had just been like chumming hard and diving, and on the boat was anchored on the surface like this, and then the current on the surface had, if I remember, I want to say it was only like 30 or 40 foot viz on the surface, and the surface current was going back straight away from the boat, but as soon as you got down about 40 foot, the current was going this way, and it was blue.
Yeah, that's how I recall it as well.
Underneath. So we've been chumming, and we'd shot like muttons and yellowtails, and down deep, I kept seeing these cuberas, and there was not a school, but maybe half a dozen good-sized cuberas that came up, and there was one like stud, like I can't remember now, but he was definitely over 50. He might have been 50, he might have been 80, and he had a huge white mark on the left side of his face. And I'd seen him a couple times, and we had a reel gun. You had a little pissant reel gun, like you had like a 100.
I had every gun in the book at that
something,
point too. I don't know why I had that thing with me, but yeah.
And I remember it had a white handle, and I want to say I had a Rife 120 or 130, and I had a couple chances and just couldn't get close or whatever. So I was like, all right, let's get in the boat, let's take a break. I'm not going to be able to land him with just a reel. So the guys had like a pin. Was it an 80 or like
I
a 130?
remember a 130, but yeah.
I think it was a 130 too. So they had a pin 130, which is a heavy duty fishing reel. I was like, all right, here's what we're going to do. Like, I'm going to breathe up, because I could dive deeper than you at the time. I was like, I'm going to breathe up. I'm going to clip the pin off to my shooting line, and I'm going to go down and I'm going to shoot this thing. As soon as you feel it go, you guys in the boat just crank him up, and that way I'm free of the rig, and I don't have to fight this thing, and I can just come up, because I knew I was going to have to do a deep dive, because he wasn't coming up over like 100 very much. So I remember exactly how we were. So that boat had had the platform there at the engines, and I was holding on to the port side, I want to say. I think I was holding on the port side, and you were holding on the starboard side. And we had talked about this like extensively. So you were supposed to watch me, because like I was going to make this deep dive, and I was breathing up, and I was super focused, like trying to breathe up. And I remember out of the corner of my eye seeing you go down, and I was like, he must just be doing one of these or whatever. So I didn't think much of it. I'm trying to relax, take my last breath. I'm bombed down, and I tuck, and I'm going. I'm looking, and I get to like 50, 60 foot. I'm looking around, I see them, and I'm like, oh yeah, here they come. So all the cuberas start coming up, and I keep sinking down to like 80, and they're all there, like probably 4 or 5 good ones, like up to like maybe 40 pounds, like right there. And I could have shot any one of those, but I was like, I'm in the zone. I'm going to wait for that huge one. Where's the big one with the white thing on its face? And I remember looking this way, and I looked this way, which was down current, and I caught a movement. I caught something white out of the corner of my eye, and I looked, and I was like, oh shit. And it was your loaded gun sinking to the bottom, straight down, and immediately, and I can feel it in my chest right now. Immediately I saw that. I was like, oh shit. And I looked above it, and you were at probably, I want to say when I first saw you, you were probably at 70, and I was at 90 or 85 or something, and you were in a seated position, and you were sinking like butt down. And I'm gonna try to do my best to not cry saying this, but I knew right then that sorry. I knew that if I grabbed you, I wasn't going to be able to get you, and I wasn't going to be able to bring you up. And all this stuff is going through my mind really quickly. And I can't tell you how many things went through my mind in such a short period of time. And I said, the only chance that I have here of us both not dying is to shoot him. And we had talked about this many times with GR and all of our buddies, and I'm sure you and I as well. And we said, the person's probably already going to die. The least we can do is try to recover them. So I started swimming over there, and when I say over there, you were far, man. You were like at least 50 feet away, 60 feet away. And I started swimming over there, and as I got near you, I'm like, okay, I'm going to shoot him in the calf because you were in a seated position. And I was like, that's not going to hurt him. There's no arteries there or whatever. And just as I got within range, your whole body turned towards me, like chest towards me. And I aimed and shot just in front of your fins. And I don't know if I have it on here, but you can look on the bottom right on your thing. You can touch the screen and share a picture, Steve. I think.
Oh, not that way. Yeah, I can share it.
So, let's see if I can turn this foolishness off. So, I'll turn that around too. So just as I got there, I pulled the trigger and shot you in the fin, and I looked up, and again I'm at like 85 foot, having made a 85 foot down and then swum horizontally 50 or 60 feet. And I remember looking at the surface, and I could see the surface, and just this overwhelming sense of dread came over me, and I was like, I'm not going to make it. And it was like such a feeling in my chest like I've never felt before. It's like when you were a little kid and you feel like you're in deep trouble, and you're just like, oh God. And I remember looking up, and I'm like, okay, perfect, like tuck. I dropped my weight belt and just went in a perfect tuck, and went straight up, and I hit the surface as close as I've ever been to blacking out. And right when I hit the surface, I screamed at the boat, and thank goodness, I mean, they were like already starting to crank, but instead of breathing, I screamed, and I started to have a samba. And I had heard, this is before I'd ever had a class too, and I had heard from the people that had done the class to do the hook breaths, and that 100% saved my life. I hit the surface, and I went, and those 5 breaths definitely saved my life. And I hauled butt back to the boat, and I got to the boat and jumped on it, and I'm screaming like bloody murder, all this stuff. Right, I jump in the boat, and I start throwing stuff out of the boat. They're cranking, and the rod is like this. So they think they've got like 100-pound Cubera.
Bigger.
and I'm telling them, it's Steve, cut the anchor line, call the Coast Guard, like all this stuff or whatever. And they get you up close to the edge of the boat, and we grab you and pull you into the boat. And you were like the color of my shirt. And we pull you in, and the craziest, like this color orange foam was coming out of your mouth. In my recollection, it was coming out of your mouth, your nose, your ears. It was just everywhere. And I was like, oh, this is really bad, obviously. So you think about it, you weren't able to equalize the entire way down on that dive
on the
because you were
surface,
blacked out.
and you shoot me, and they don't reel until you get to the surface and start yelling.
You must have been well over 100.
Probably close to the bottom, I would think.
Jesus Christ. That's your deepest dive.
I love that joke. Yeah, I remember it almost all the same way. You try to do everything right and set everything up right. And you guys know, like, I'm in insurance, so you're trying to minimize, the negative outcomes from the beginning, whether it be through like planning or setup. And yeah, Ariel, I'll get right to that. Good question. And I think there's like a comedy of errors going into it on the front end for me. I've always, worn a dive watch with audible alarms. I was super negative at that time. I was not wearing a belt. I was just naturally negative.
You had 0% body fat. You had a rash guard on and board shorts.
I couldn't drop the belt. I didn't have one on. But for that reason, I should have had on some, flotation, some buoyancy, so that I had the option to drop the belt. I remember swimming up thinking, "Ooh, it'd be nice to drop the belt." Along with a myriad of other thoughts like, "Man, this is probably my deepest dive, and I don't know if I can make it up from here." And you're right, it never started off that way. We kind of pre-planned for otherwise. We hooked up, Hawaiian breakaway to the 130, the buck 30. I mean, things we'd never done before, just to minimize some of these things, and even still. So, I make that kind of exploratory dive, and it was that, just like you said, it was that 40-foot, it's kind of murk, little current. Well, I get through it, and at this point I'm, sinking pretty good, and it's clear, and I see that big Cubera. And it's just the lure of the deep, the depth, I knew at that point I was in good shape. I didn't have a whole lot of concern about making it to the fish and making it back up. But you drift down, drift with the current, drift down, and drift with the current. And I remember like the bottom coming into much clearer perspective than it should have been.
You shouldn't be seeing the bottom out there.
And
we're in like 170, I think, or 180.
Painful, even. I remember getting a look at it and thinking, well, now here I am basically lost in space. I'm deep, which way is up? I got to get it back together. I can't drop a belt. I'm all alone. And, it's not all alone in that I didn't have a dive buddy, but it's one of the things we talk about all the time, just like it's body recovery at that point. You're not going to kill yourself, which is, one of the things that we see most frequently in these types of events. But we talk about trying to stay at one up, one down. And sometimes as best you try to, even in optimal conditions, if I'm going first, the conditions can almost prevent it, especially in a lot of current on deep dives. So I realized I was in a tough spot before I start making my way back up. And that's when, I think even if it's just a little bit of uncertainty kind of creeps in, you just give fear that little root, to get into your brain, and all of a sudden, heart rate, all that stuff that you're fighting so hard to keep under control, kind of goes out the window. So whether it was an ounce of panic or 5 heartbeat per second per minute worth of panic, I don't know, but I remember it wasn't a whole lot. I was like very cognizant up until, hitting the surface. Errol will probably tell us like rule of nines or what have you. I was right there.
Do you remember
Pretty
hitting
much,
the
pretty
surface?
vividly. If it wasn't, it was within a foot.
Do you
No,
remember dropping your
no,
gun?
and I like
Yeah.
to think that that was probably like a somewhat conscious thought. As I was getting close to the surface, you remember, like I had all those guns then. I didn't care. It was the last thing I wanted to worry about. But yeah, I do remember thinking, this is about as deep and as long as I've done it, and I've got to really keep it together here in the face of adversity, which is really one of my favorite reasons to dive altogether. You're putting yourself out in the elements, whether it be bad visibility or chum or sharks or current or what have you, in order to face the goal. Like you've got all these natural tendencies working against you as you try to relax and find that happy face, happy place.
And you were in phenomenal shape at the time. Like you were playing football
Yeah. I
at
mean,
Florida.
like within.
You were not the quickest kid on campus. I remember you trying to
I
be.
did win.
You did
I
not.
did
You
win
got
the
smoked.
competition, but that's all I won. But yeah, I was in pretty good shape at the time, and that translated to pretty good dive shape. I still don't think I have like the overall best. Just like every other sport, there's a physique. There's there are things that go beyond the effort you put into it, and I know where my limits are now, and I probably didn't then, all things considered. So,
Dude, you were a kid. I mean, dude. The fact that anyone spearfishing and freediving makes it past the age of 18 is amazing. Like, whoever has kids on here that's watching, put them in a class. Like, there's nothing better for this sport than a class. It's going to teach you safety. It's going to carry you through the rest of your life, and it's going to open your freaking eyes. I wish that we had it. Thank goodness. Like, I was buddies with Martin and Kirk Crack and everybody, and I knew all the stuff at this time. But so, what is the first thing you remember when you came back to? And I'm not going to go through all that stuff because I will cry full out.
There's a couple of questions I'll get to kind of as I finish up through it, but I kind of remember coming back on the boat, and when I was on the boat, and there was clearly like a relatively large memory gap between how I got there and what the hell I'm doing and why I feel so bad. There was only one real answer as to what had happened. Just like you said, Cam, I think it's sputum or sputum. I'm sure somebody will correct me. The frothy fluid, the pink orange colored frothy fluid coming out of literally everywhere. It felt like I was breathing through a straw. My lungs were so full of it that I couldn't really take a breath. It wasn't really enough to sustain consciousness, just enough to kind of keep me alive.
So I will say that. So when Steve was in the boat, when we finally got him to start breathing again, I remember, this orange foamy blood's coming out of his mouth. I ended up turning him on his side, and it was just leaking out of his mouth. And after, it seemed like a minute or 2 minutes or whatever, he finally went, and I was like, holy crap, like that's what you hear.
Yeah.
That's what people talk about. That's no, like in my mind, I was like, that's the final air coming out of people, like, and he's dead. And you went, and you took what I would have described, I think I wrote it as like a 5% breath. And I was like, holy shit, there's a chance. And all this foam kept coming out. And we just like breathe. And I want to say it was like 10 minutes after that before you were even conscious. And what the reason for that orange foam, and I think Errol can correct me if I'm wrong here, is all your alveoli burst. Like there's so much trauma to your lungs and your alveoli, like they basically burst. So that's blood and foam and like air and everything. It's all jacked
and
up.
like my understanding is it's somewhat a blessing in disguise when that happens, because like without that you're facing like a large amount of external pressure, and like I don't know how a lot of those organs, especially your lungs, would really cope with it if you don't have something and they're kind of keeping them together. Obviously, not an expert on that part, but it really took 2 or 3 days for the majority of that to, So
you were in the ICU, weren't you?
Quick fast forward, right? 15 more minutes on the boat, slowly regaining consciousness and like slowly regaining motor skills. Maybe another 15 minutes somewhere in there. I don't know. They have oxygen out to me, bucket, hospital.
Well, so that's another thing. So I think we were 70 miles offshore, and we called the Coast Guard, and Coast Guard helicopter came out, and they picked you up off the bow of the boat. And when we were like 50 miles off and took you in, you went to ICU. And they're the ones that gave you O2 and stuff. And in the future, like, we've tried to carry it as much as we can on the boat, because I mean like without that, I mean, you still might have had some major stuff, because pneumonia and stuff after the fact is like super dangerous.
That was one of the things that they talked about a lot. You know, they didn't have, there's not a whole lot of case study as to like what your chances are for coming back. And obviously I was young and in good shape at that time, had a lot of things going for me, but there are people that don't absorb that fluid, and it very quickly turns into pneumonia, and you know, things go fast. Like Errol said, there was a ton of trauma. Like a lot of things were impacted. You're in such a weakened immune state, plus at the hospital. Even making it at that point is still scary.
And people are asking about like the lasting effects. Like if you look at Steve's patchy beard, that's probably because of that.
I'm sure a lot of
not enough blood flow to the face.
I'm honest about how good looking I am, but I mean, imagine how it was prior. I'm fooling.
No, but I mean, for everybody, I mean, this is obviously a very difficult story for Steve and I to tell. And I mean, this is the first time him and I have ever, I mean, I think we've just kind of in passing talked about it. You know, it's very difficult for both of us. And if and when if you ever have a situation where you help or save somebody from blackout, you have to realize that from the blackout person's point of view, they don't remember anything. And the guy that has saved them, he remembers everything, because he was conscious the whole time, and he's seeing his best buddy basically, you know, die. And Steve, the very first thing he said when he came to and was conscious was thank you. And I cannot tell you, that is, of all the times I've ever been told thanks in my life, Steve, that has resonated the most. And I mean, of all the things I've ever done in life, that was probably one of the most important, but the one I wish I had not had to do, you know? So, I mean, I'm very blessed to have you as a friend, and to still have you here, obviously.
Yeah. Thanks, buddy. So, I mean, we talk all the time about things that you do wrong and things you do right. And obviously the best decision I could have made today was picking the right dive buddy, because I'm still here. I'm sure a lot of others wouldn't. But yeah, fortunate obviously to survive the baro trauma that came along with it, and still be here to tell the tale.
Could you imagine like making, I mean, you've done it, but imagine making, like, for everybody that's on here, imagine making a dive to 100 feet.
Without touching,
or 130
without
feet,
zero equalization.
without equalizing.
Try to go to the bottom of your pool on a half breath.
Yeah, without equalizing, and likely you were totally.
Yeah, I wonder. Like my eyeballs were probably outside of my head, but that's a sight for another day. Yeah, just to have gone through it and obviously come back to the other side, it'll open your eyes to a lot. You know, I talked about like the decision making and the pre-planning and all that. It's just like, you know, we do a lot of dives. You know, some days there's 20 dives, some days there's 100, and some days there's, you know, some trips it's 2 days in a row, and some trips it's 10. And like any one of those dives could kill you. You know, it's not the deepest one or the longest one or the biggest fish.
It's one little stupid thing, man.
So yeah, it's everything. It's one thing. It's just thinking. It's being smart. It's using your brain. It's all the things that we're like so accustomed to not doing today. And it can be any one of them. So.
So the question has come up multiple times here, and I'm going to open this up both sides. So for you, did it have any lasting effects?
Man, you know, I thought on that a lot. The next like year or two after that, I played SEC football, and I think that probably had more effects on my brain than anything else. It's kind of a joke and jest, but no, I mean, within 6 months of that, I was like literally like what I'd call it, like my peak physical condition, and one of the peak physical conditions that I think anybody probably could have been in.
Sorry, everybody. This thing cuts us off after an hour. Let's see if I can get Steve back on here. Where you at, Steve? Need you back. I forgot this thing cuts us off after an hour. So we're trying to make it better. But I'm glad you guys are tuning into this and, you know, kind of offering some constructive, you know, criticism and chiming in and everything. Let's see if we can get this thing coming. There we go. All right, we're getting Steve back on there. So Steve was saying that, you know, after, you know, 6 months after this, he was playing, you know, football for Florida, you know, and basically in the best, you know, shape of his life. So, I mean, I don't think there's any residual, you know, in that, like when you black out, it's a pretty long time, and it's after terminal gasp that you actually have the chance of any kind of, you know, brain damage or anything. And dude, you're extremely intelligent. Like, I mean, you don't limp.
And you guys
you don't
should have seen how good looking I was. No, I like to think that like I would have like caught wind of like any change in characteristic, be it like physically, mentally, whatever. And I think it's remarkable how little impact it's had in the long haul. I mean, there's still those days where I look back at the story or read it or see a picture or see somebody comment or send me an email, and I'm like, wow, you know, it's almost unreal that it was actually me, surreal that it was actually me.
It's surreal
exactly.
to think about that. Dude, so like Errol said, I'm so glad that stuff happened when you were a kid, you know, because it gives you the chance to, you know, bounce back from that stuff. So from my side of it, I like to think that I'm a pretty mentally strong person. And I remember a couple weeks later, GR and Brad and I went down to the Keys, and we were diving that deep stuff, diving that deep ledge that goes from like 90 to 130, which is easy stuff for us. You know, we're used to diving that stuff, shooting muttons and stuff. We're diving, perfect conditions, crystal clear or whatever. And I was down like 80, 90 foot or whatever. And I glanced up at the surface, and that overwhelming feeling of total despair came over me. And my heart skipped a beat, and I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to make it to the surface. And I was like, same thing. I tucked, got to the surface, and I hit the surface. And Brad and GR were both right there, and they're like, it's okay. You're fine. You're going to be fine. Like, relax. And I was like super upset. And I had residual like mental stuff from it. It was wild. And you know, throughout life I've never had anything like that. And I really feel for people that have, you know, mental issues, because it was totally out of my control. Like, it was just that view of the surface triggered something in my brain, and that feeling came back over me. And I'm sure I told you, like, I ended up going to see a therapist a couple times, you know, to try to just talk through it, you know, because I couldn't stop it. And it took me a couple months to get through it. So once I got through that stuff, I think it was like 5 or 6 months down the line, you remember I got a call from the Coast Guard. And the Coast Guard's like, hey, we're doing an investigation on you for, you know, this incident with Steve. And I'm like, what? I'm like, I didn't do anything wrong. They're like, no, it's okay. Like, yeah, it was PTSD. So they're like, no, it's okay. They want to give you an award. I was like, all right. So long story short, and I meant to get it. It's in all Connor's like stuff. He's got like a sextant box with all this cool stuff. But they ended up awarding me a life-saving medal. Did you come to that thing, or you weren't able to come to that?
Gold life-saving medal, the highest honor awarded to a civilian.
Yeah, and I remember the most significant thing from that was when we were in there, it was all these, senators and congressmen and
They all got
the,
awards. No one cared.
admirals and generals and stuff. Everybody stood up, when they were telling the story. And, the admiral that gave it to me said, I've given this twice in my entire 35-year career, and both times has been posthumously, meaning both times the people had died doing it. So I don't think that I really deserve that thing, but it was pretty cool that they did that. And, again, the award that I wish I never had to get.
Yeah, the story, kind of just to piggyback on that, Cam, like having to kind of get over it, getting back in the water and realizing how much, how much it actually gave to you rather than it took from you, right? Like how much happiness it added, that feeling of comfort, and being all alone, all that. Like the question that I get more so than the, hey, are you still okay? Is do you still do that? Do you still go diving? Like, was that too heavy?
Yeah.
Like, are you feeling effects or like physical or mental? And it took me a little while to kind of get past that too. But I think when it comes down to it, you and I both kind of love it for the same reasons. It's the happy place. They say to go to the happy place, and this is where it is. But
So, in closing, what's your advice to anyone about diving?
I thought I was a good diver then, and I thought I had a lot of knowledge at that point, and I had definitely made much deeper dives, probably more dangerous dives, but it doesn't matter how much you know or how deep the dive is or what your watch says. Like, every circumstance is unique. You need to know your body, know your signals. There's no substitute for a class, regardless of who you take it with, when you can explore your limits under very strict and regimented circumstances and get a feel for how that condition deteriorates. Just like any other athlete, you're a machine. You need to know what the machine can do and how it does it. So just need to be careful and safe. It's not going to be the deepest dive. It's not going to be the longest dive. It's just going to be the one that you don't pay attention to.
That's it. There's always going to be another fish. Well, good, man. Well, I miss you. Look forward to diving with you here soon when all this craziness passes. So, what's your tip for keeping your sanity during this? Well,
hopefully, some of my buddies that are watching know I've been into gardening lately. The bananas.
And you just lost. Watch the audience just plummet right now. Watch this.
The golf course is good, but I'm getting back to my roots where it all started.
94.
Jumping in under the docks, starting with the sheep's head, the mullet. Wanting to know what was going on in the world around me underwater was really what this all started with. So
Stay
that's where
humble.
I'm going, making it easy.
Yeah. Well, good, buddy. We'll take care. Thanks again for tonight,
Good to see you, buddy.
we'll see you soon. All right, brother. See ya.